I want to welcome you to the Pro Mindset Podcast. The Pro Mindset Podcast is all about diving into the headspace that results in championship performance. High-performing athletes, winners, have this mental flow and have a positive headspace for their performances and success. Join me, Craig Domann, sports attorney and NFL agent, on this podcast. I will interview pro athletes, college athletes, football coaches, and sports personalities. Together, we can discover how you can get in the flow and have your own pro mindset. Today on Pro Mindset Podcast, we're going to have an outstanding young man by the name of Michael Lehan as our guest. I represented Michael when he played in the NFL. He came out of the University of Minnesota. He was a defensive back. Was drafted in the 5th round by the Cleveland Browns, I believe in 2003. He played for several teams in the NFL, the Browns, the Dolphins, and the Saints. And he's one of those rare players that actually walked away on his own terms, had opportunities to continue playing, and decided to move on to life after football. He's currently the high school principal of Oseo High School in the Twin Cities. He's happily married and father of 2 beautiful girls. And one of the things that stands out about Michael for me is he's always has been a very intelligent person when it comes to making great decisions, deciding on the path to take for his future, things of that nature. And today we're going to talk about Michael grew up in the foster care system, and he certainly beat the odds in so many ways. In his athletic career and his academic career as well. We're going to talk about his motivations and keys to success in the NFL. And lastly, he's going to give some good advice to high school athletes that aspire to play in college or play in the NFL. Mike, you played for the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers for head coach Glenn Mason. What do you remember as his secret to success for his program?
I believe Coach Mason's secret to success, I think that he was a realist. I think that he had high expectations about the product that he wanted on the field, about the character dispositions of his players, and then obviously the nuance of the game of football. So I think the secret of success is being his visioning was very clear. Sometimes when you have abstract visioning, you can't necessarily focus on the task at hand, let alone long-term planning and how your day-to-day operations are going to lead toward that end result. He knew what he wanted. He recruited in accordance with that. And the players that he recruited obviously fit the bill as well. As you think about Mason, during my time there, my first year was 1998. And prior to that, University of Minnesota hadn't been in a lot of bowl games. We went to 4 consecutive bowl games, had winning season, the highest rated as far as national ranking that we've been in a very long time. And that is a testament to what Coach Mason wanted to see, the expectations that he had, and the advocacy. I think that's a piece that's lost as well. Sometimes players, although you might not necessarily get along with your coach, you may not see eye to eye, but somehow inherently you know that there's a level of advocacy in which coaches have for the players. As we think about the advocacy that Mason had for us, we saw some new construction happening around, whether it be a new locker room, new weight room, these sort of things that were just kind of indicators of advocacy that he would demonstrate for us along the way. So if you were to ask me what you did, what are the keys to success? I don't know that I could answer that with, 1 or 2 things rather than an environment of expectations which is situated firmly on winning. And what does winning behaviors look like on the field, off the field? What does a winning organization look like as far as you think about the locker room, the film room, these sort of things? One of my coaches along the way said, you look good, you play good. And so when you feel good about the environment that you're in and the advocacy, and not agreement, I didn't say agreement, but the advocacy, inherently you feel better and you want to produce at a higher level.
What was like your greatest accomplishment at Minnesota? And when you look back and you look in your rearview mirror and you look at your college experience, what's the thing that's fond in your mind?
As simplistic as it might sound, is that I got my degree from there. I think that the NCAA, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It is an industry, and going in there. But then you look at the percentage of student athletes that go through the NCAA that might have a scholarship, a full-ride scholarship to a college university, who end up not finishing. So the fact that I was able to finish and not have any student loan debt and position myself well for the real world. Obviously, I was, played football for years after I graduated from the University of Minnesota. But my find is, if we think about what's the intent, what do people go to college for or in hopes of? And it's not universal, but I would say the vast majority, hopefully, is to secure a degree for college and career readiness. The fact that I was able to secure undergrad degree, I think that's my fondest memory. As we think about on the football field, I go back to some of the games that we won, the bowl games that we won. I go back to the camaraderie in the locker rooms. I'd go back to even some of my personal success, whether it be named captain, being named, all Big Ten player, some of these items. So there's a lot of good things that I can think about if I go back to my days at the University of Minnesota. But I think as I think broadly and maybe from a macro level rather than a micro level, I think about that I was able to secure a undergraduate degree that I didn't have to pay for.
That's really cool, Mike. I think a lot of players today underappreciate the value of their education that they don't have to pay for. Hey, when you're looking at your college years, and if you were going to communicate one of the life lessons you learned, what would it be? What do you take from your college career? What would you pass on to high school kids that you're the principal of that might be student athletes that they should be looking for when they go to college?
That you really just have to humble yourself. And understand that you're not the know-it-all. And when I say that, I'm thinking about the number of athletes that go into college thinking that I'm a third baseman, but they end up being a pitcher, or that I'm a running back in my case, and then I ended up being a defensive back. The fact that you are no longer the prima donna that you think you are, or maybe that you thought you were in high school, that now all of a sudden there's people bigger, stronger, faster than what you are. And there's people such as coaches that have years of experience. And the fact that you need to defer in some cases and take heed to what their recommendations are, because their recommendations in many cases are going to position you best for success. So the life lesson that I learned was be humble. How does that then transfer into the business world? That would suggest, I would offer that you have to create space for multiple perspectives. How do you create space for multiple perspectives to reveal the blind spots that you have? Because as you go along on your life journey, you only have your lived experience to pull from. Other people have different lived experiences in which is going to expand your mental model, your mental capability. And then as you go forward trying to make better decisions are made when diverse perspectives are brought to the table. So that's how it would look from maybe a student athlete perspective. Then how does that transition then to the business world?
Okay. You were drafted by the Browns, 2003. You were with the Saints and Dolphins, right? You were with anybody else? No? Okay. You played for Nick Saban, who's obviously a much more successful and decorated college coach than pro coach. Mm-hmm. Played for Sean Payton, who's a Super Bowl champion coach. What did you learn from those guys?
Nick Saban, I have never been around a more kind of roll up your sleeves, old school smash mouth type coach than Nick Saban. He intellectually, I feel like, and now I spent more time with Saban than I did Sean Payton, so it's not a slight at Sean Payton, but intellectually, I feel like Nick Saban was the smartest coach that I played for. His ability to examine, break down, coach, truly coach multiple positions on the field. We know him as a defensive mind, but he spent time on the offensive side of the ball as well. Just Saban was just a master at his craft, and I talked a little bit about being humble. He was a head coach that sat in the defensive backs meeting room virtually every single day. He was a guy that was available to answer questions. He was out there yelling, coaching. Oftentimes you'll see head coaches, unless they're offensive specialists in some cases, they're off to the side. This guy was running around on the field. You could tell that his DNA, part of it was football. And it was fun because I even think back about my time in football, and I certainly enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed other things in life and productive things. I don't want people to suggest that I had some bad habits, but I also enjoyed other things that didn't really relate to football from a professional standpoint. So I admired Coach Saban and his passion around the game of football, his knowledge around the game of football. And one of the things that he said, and I don't know if he actually truly meant it, but he always told us that as a head coach, his goal was always to hire people who are smarter than he is. And I don't think there was anybody they hired. But you look at his tree. His tree is almost like a Belichick tree. You look at Kirby Smart. Obviously, he had a great year at Georgia this last year, and his list of coaches that are even in the NFL and different places is growing pretty long. So there is an aspect in which I believe that he has an eye for talent, both from coaches and from players. But one of the things that really stuck to me and that I like to do when I have the opportunity to hire is truly hire people who are smarter than me. And because there's going to be new ideas, they can challenge my perspective, and hopefully we create an environment that's conducive for each individual that's going to enter it.
Okay. Let's go back to 2003 and you're a rookie with the Browns. Mm-hmm. When did you know that you were a baller in the league? What play, what day, what practice, what game, what happened that flipped the switch in your head that, because everybody makes that transition. Mm-hmm. They think they can play and then they know they can play.
Mine was kind of, it was a special teams play because I remember had a holdout because that's when the Browns were trying to sign everybody to a 5-year deal. Mm-hmm. So I was a little bit late into training camp, rightfully so. I should have been. And so one of my first practices, I lined up across from Andre Davis, and we had Dennis Norcutt there, and I've never been run past in my life. There's never been at the collegiate level, there was nobody, and this is when Charles Johnson was at Michigan State, but there was nobody who could just flat out, Lee Evans was at Wisconsin, there was nobody that could just flat out just run past me. Andre David did that, and I was like, at that point, I was like, I might not be cut out for this. Well, he was probably like 210, 6'3", 210, okay. But he was humming. And because he was also a track star at Virginia Tech at that time. And so that's when I questioned myself. But then when I said I could play, I had a good practice. I lined up as a gunner on special teams. I was able to shake a couple people, get down there. Then I went and played the slot later in that practice and got a couple of interceptions. And then it just started clicking. The snowball, if you will, started to expand, get bigger and bigger, and you just had a couple of small successes. Now, I alluded to special teams, and I think it's important for anybody who has aspirations to get into the NFL. the reality is the more you can do, the more valuable you are. And sometimes you're first, and if you're a collegiate player and you go to the league, you say, oh, I'm not a special teams player. Yes, you are once you get there. And your early success oftentimes might come on the special teams unless you're a first or second round draft pick, because that's where you're going to be playing. So you have to take time, and I'm intentional about naming the special teams because you have to celebrate those small successes because those are going to lead to bigger successes.
And you definitely played with some really terrific elite players in the NFL. What did you learn from those guys that stuck with you to this day?
In Cleveland, my locker was right next to Robert Griffith, and had many years successful on the Vikings in Minnesota, and then the tail end of his career spent some time in Cleveland, obviously. And one of the things he just said, again, is very simple, but he said, this is the best place because Cleveland, it was at that point, it wasn't the booming town that it is now with LeBron, and you had the Hard Rock, that was pretty much of the Hall of Fame, and that was about it. There was nothing there. The lakefront was abysmal, and it was not there. And what he told me, he said, and I obviously come from Minnesota, so I don't need bells and whistles, the Miami or Louisiana, that sort of thing. But he said this is the best place as a rookie that you could end up, because he said that oftentimes rookies try to keep up with the Joneses. And so my first year in Cleveland, I ended up buying a 3-bedroom house for $150,000. You go somewhere else, if you're out in San Francisco and New York, wherever the case might be, that might not even get you a 500 square foot apartment. In fact, it will not get you a 500 square foot apartment. So he just said, don't keep up with the Joneses. Know who you are. Know who you are, and say that. He just reminded me that the average career is less than 3 years, and I don't know. I think it's still hovering right around that 10-year timeline. But he said you're going to have more life, you're going to live longer outside of this career than you are during this year. Save your money, and because he started the question: do you have a wife? Do you have a family? Do you have any of these? What are your responsibilities? And my answer was no to all of his questions. So he said, then you need to save. So just a nice reminder, because you see the glitz and the glamour that everybody talks about in the NFL, that you have to spend this and you have to spend that, or nice cars or whatever the case. To be affirmed in that manner by a successful veteran to suggest that, hey, you don't need to do all that. All you need to do is go out there on the field and play well. That was assuring and affirming for me to know that there's some wise people. These aren't dumb jocks, but there's some wise people that play this game of football. And it was nice to know as a rookie that I had the opportunity to have a locker right next to an individual like that.
Mike, what was your mindset as a player, your habits, your fundamentals that led you to have a successful NFL career?
I was scared. I was scared to be horrible.
That's really good.
I just.
It's true though. There's a lot of truth to that.
I didn't want to be the worst person. I didn't want people to scratch their head and say, "Wow, you're garbage. Why are you here?" Because I had never been. I had one Division I offer from the University of Minnesota. At that time, there wasn't a whole lot of respect that people had for skill position athletes, in particular coming from Minnesota. Obviously, it was Louisiana, Texas, Georgia, all these states, but Arizona, nothing from Minnesota. So what kept me going was just the fact that I just didn't want to be garbage. I wanted to be better than the next man, and as you think about motivation, intrinsic versus extrinsic, I felt bad that the motivation factor for me was extrinsic. It wasn't a really internal type thing, but there's a lot of people that have extrinsic motivation, whether it be the salary that they earn, or the rookies that might be drafted, or the free agents that are signed. What kept me going was just the fact that I didn't want to be terrible, and I had it didn't scare me to where I couldn't move, or I was so caught up in the notion of not being good that I wasn't effective. But it kept on motivating me to be the best person, spend the extra time, do the little things, not have all the distraction that some other people do. So you kind of take an assessment and do an analysis of, okay, where have I seen some of my teammates fall by the wayside? What are some of their habits that may not be conducive to a longer career? And how can I ensure that those elements are not present in my experience while I'm here? So those are the type of things that I considered, looked into, and and Craig, you know this, the fact that I didn't play as long as I could have, and the fact that I had a contract offer that I walked away from, that I guess kind of goes to show that certainly I now live at years later with kind of what could it have been, but I feel good about the fact that it was more on my terms than not. And when you can have opportunities to walk away on your terms, I think that suggests that you're making the right kind of decisions along the way.
Well, NFL players don't get to do do-overs.
Right.
Right? But what do you wish you knew when you were a rookie back in 2003 that you see clearly now?
Well, that's a fantastic question. That there can be as much static as you allow there to be. As we think about static, and the old radios where you have to kind of just surf, and then there's static and you can't hear anything clearly, and it's like, oh, you thought you made something out, or is this the song that but you can't hear it because of the static. But then once you get to the station that you're looking for, everything is crystal clear. The speakers work well, and everything is in flow, if you will. And one of the things that I learned once I spent some time in the NFL, and certainly what I know now, is that the level of static that you have in your career and that you have on a day-to-day basis is to the level in which you allow there to be static. And oftentimes, as a rookie, I walked into an entity that I knew nothing about. So then the only understanding that I had to essentially construct my understanding was the voices of other people. And those voices of other people bring in their perspectives. And so now to know that, well, you know what, you don't have to do this, or you don't have to do that. And all those things are static that can detract from the essential focus of being a productive athlete in the NFL. So young folks going in that are draft rookies who either were drafted or not, and even just the thinking around free agency. I think there was a study, Craig, and you know better than me, but I think there was a study that was done and looked at the tenure or the career of NFL athletes, and in fact, it found that players who were drafted in the rounds 3 to 5 actually had a longer career in the NFL than that of first and second rounders. Now, I don't want to put bad information out there. I feel like I saw that one time, but I also want to suggest that there's a lot more free agents. I mean, the talent pool is deep, so the static as a free agent would be like, oh, I'm just here as a body for camp. No, you're not. There's a great opportunity to make teams as a free agent as well. So, to make my answer concise, one of the things that if I wish I knew then that I know that now is that you get to choose the level of static that you allow into your professional space, and choose wisely.
You have definitely been a very successful post-NFL career player. Unlike a lot of guys that struggle with making the transition, you made a really smooth transition, and you have dual careers as an entrepreneur in the real estate world, as well as being the principal of a very successful high school. What did you learn from the game of football that has transcended into your careers today?
I'm competitive. It's not necessarily a learning as much as it is just a mindset. I can't help myself. I'm competitive. I'm competitive. And I like to say that I'm productively competitive in the sense that hopefully I don't stumble on my own feet because I think when you're competitive, there's a level of ego that comes in there. And certainly I have one. I'd be foolish not to speak to that. But hopefully I manage and monitor my ego. So then that's where that productive competitiveness comes in. Where do I create space and opportunity to have meaningful dialogues with my students, my teachers, my district leadership to make sure that the decisions that I'm making are in accordance and align with the priority outcomes of the district? And when I go and buy houses, how can I negotiate a price that's going to create the best margins for myself? So there's elements of competitiveness that show up endlessly in the educational realm, and then also in the entrepreneurship around buying and selling houses. But the giving back at the end of the margin in the real estate is who am I selling the house to, and if it's a first time home buyer, how can I make sure that the product that they're going to have? So the competitiveness is buying it for a good price, but then investing the right amount of money so it's a really good product, and even selling it where there's some equity for some folks at the tail end of the project. So what I learned from football and what I had going in, and maybe there's a correlation between I didn't want to be horrible. Maybe the same motivating factor, like, heck, I don't want to be a horrible principal, or I don't want to be a horrible real estate person, is something that continues to motivate me, and maybe that turns into competitiveness. And I love it to be true. Just this last year in U.S. News and World Report, my high school was rated one of the best high schools in the country. It's never been rated that before, ever in the history, and it's been around since 1925. So the fact that we are earning some of this awards and recognition is a testament to the collective work that's being done there. That's not about me. It's about the collective work, and hopefully the environment that's put in place for people to thrive. And that's truly what good coaches do. Good coaches put players in positions to thrive. And hopefully I've been able to put my students, my staff in positions to thrive, because I don't want to be horrible.
Well, that's definitely an interesting perspective, wanting not to be horrible. And I think different people have different motivators, and certainly not wanting to be horrible is a good one. As a high school principal, you work with high school student athletes every day. Many of them obviously aspire to be college players, girls and boys. What advice do you have for the student athlete at the high school level that's venturing into the college world?
I encourage them to aspire to be good humans first. One of the things that Craig told me early on is that if you chase money, you're never going to get to it. But if you chase the talents and invest in yourself, the talents that you have, it will come. So I tell them, you know what? Be a good human first and foremost. Know who you are. Know what you stand for. My father used to tell me, if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. So if you don't know thyself, you're going to have a hard time convincing other people about who you are. And if you identify, and that's another question sometimes I get, because people will say, well, Michael, you had such a good transition from the NFL to the real world, if you will. And how did that happen? And what I tell people is the fact that I felt as if there are some players who identify themselves as solely NFL players. And when you do that, when that's gone, then who are you? Whereas I identified myself not as a NFL player, but as a brother, as a son, as a scholar, as an academic, as whatever the case might be. Because then when you identify yourself as something other than a football player, as you transition, now you have something to invest in. You have something other that people can engage you in conversation about, rather than how many rushing yards you had, or receiving yards, or tackles, or sacks, or whatever statistics. Because all that does is open up the wound that much more, or suggest that you're, not successful anymore because you're not doing that one thing that people knew you to be. So I just encourage my scholars to be the best people they can be. I tell them to take care of their body, take care of their health, and then I ask them, and what else are you going to contribute to the community in which you choose to reside in afterwards? Because I hope that you become a collegiate athlete or professional athlete, whatever the case might be. But when I was done playing, I was 29, 30 years old. And so what's next? And so then to have that long range, that 5, that 10-year plan, what is that going to look like? And then how do you identify beyond your current designation, wherever you are in life? You must be something greater than that, because your talents are greater than a singular focus.
Okay, Michael, if you were speaking at the NFL Rookie Symposium, which you may do someday, how would you tell a rookie to maximize his NFL career? I mean, one thing I'll say is that there's 90 guys on every team at the beginning of camp. Mm-hmm. And as you know, they keep 53.
Yep.
So it's 37 guys that are going home, getting hurt, going on the practice squad. So it's a survival of the fittest environment.
Yeah.
So there has to be something that is common among those 53. Mm-hmm. More than talent.
Yeah. The reality is that there's some people that earned that position on the 53. There's some folks that didn't, and there's some people that are going to have it simply by circumstance. And I would say longevity is that, and this almost sounds like I'm contradicting myself, but it's something that needs to be managed, is that you can't spend your waking moments worrying about the next person. And I guess I said that I didn't want to be horrible. That doesn't mean that I'm worrying about the next person. That's just for myself. I'm out here. I have this opportunity. I don't want to be horrible. And certainly people talk about, well, you have to get enough sleep. You have to eat right. You have to work out. You have to do some of these things. I think the more that you can do, use mindfulness to really focus and center yourself, whether that be going out to practice, whether that be at halftime in the games, whatever the case might be, I believe, because the game is mental. It's a mental game. And the more mental fortitude you have to sustain the ongoing battle on the field that you're going to naturally experience, I think that you'll position yourself. I wish I don't know that I have a really clear answer, but I'm very interested in the power of mindset, the power of, positive speak. There's a book out there called Mind Gym that is phenomenal around just the psychology around sports. And how are you at peace with oneself? How can you get yourself centered? How do you press your own reset button and clear all the static that's out there? And so mindfulness and yoga, that sort of thing, I really feel is the next phase, if you will, that's going to allow players to go and do great things. Because when you can center yourself, when you have the capacity to do that, you're not worried about who they drafted. You're not worrying about where you're going to go hang out on, Friday or Saturday night or, Monday after the game. You're worried about, okay, how am I feeling? What part of my body is telling me this? And when you know what your body is telling you, you listen and you go about the right things to do to satisfy whatever that need is. So I think mindfulness. I think just knowing oneself, your mindfulness, and how you situate your experience and how you center your experience in a responsive manner to what your body tells you.
Mike, you have a very unique history. Your childhood was maybe not one of a kind, but certainly put you at a disadvantage from the start. You've been able to overcome all those obstacles and adversities. What attributes do you think in your life, or what experiences did you have in your life that's had the greatest influence on your ability to chase your dreams now?
I think the fact that I was put up for adoption, that I was in foster care, the reason why I am now able to chase my dreams is because I'm able to determine what they are. When I was in foster care, I couldn't make any decisions for myself. When I was put up for adoption at 3 months old, I couldn't make any decisions for myself. So I carry that with me, and where and how that manifests itself is the fact that I now get to make some decisions. I now get to determine what I want outcomes to be. I now get to determine who I'm going to allow and be part of that journey. And those life experiences have positioned me best to achieve the goals that I create. And I know that sounds very self-fulfilling, but it's not intended to. It's to suggest that life is meant to be lived. You're not supposed to be a passenger on your own journey of life.
You get to choose.
You get to choose, and the better positioned. And so, because I had that experience really early on, I feel like I'm better positioned to make productive and positive choices than that of ones if I didn't have that experience growing up. So I'm trying to live my best life now, to make the type of choices, to set the goals, and to model what good discernment looks like and good decision making looks like around goals. And then I even struggle with the notion, the idea of success. What does success looks like? What's the construct? Who constructs that definition of what success is? And this is me, I'm getting too philosophical now, but I just think about this because I think society norms what success looks like. And sometimes people might offer that we live in a capitalistic society. Is it the accumulation of wealth and goods and materialistic type of items? Whereas for some people, success is the fact that, gosh, you know what? I have another breath to take today. I can do that. Or that I've paid it forward. So if you were to ask me, what would success look like for you as a principal? When I have a scholar that graduates, that maybe I'm 20 years down the road in my career, and I had a scholar that graduated, 20 years ago, and they can say, hey, Lehan, remember when we had this conversation? This conversation, the things that you told me at this time changed my trajectory, changed my life. And I think about that when I'm faced with adversity or whatever. That's success, because all of a sudden the seed that you've planted is carried forward, and then they'll carry that forward. So that's success, because much of what we do, life is terminal. It's terminal. But as long as you can pay that forward, then all of a sudden you have transcended the destination that's inevitable for each and every one of us. So going all the way back to your essential question, really being in foster care, being put up for adoption, created a fire in me that says I want to be in a position at one point in my life where I get to choose. And hopefully those choices are productive.
Speaking of obstacles, everybody's got, as you mentioned, the iceberg issues that people don't see. What's the obstacle that you've had to overcome that perhaps your fans and your students don't realize?
I think that so as you think about the iceberg, only 10% of an iceberg you can see that's above the surface. 90% of an iceberg is below the surface. So I just referenced the fact that I was in foster care and put up for adoption. That's the 10%. But then the 90% below that is the social, emotional type of impact that it had, as far as self-doubt, questioning am I deserving of love? Am I good enough? What's wrong with me? All of these items that, even though, again, people might look at me like, oh man, he's successful, he's achieved a lot of things. those truths of my identity are parts of my identity that I carry even to this day. So those are still obstacles around, am I good enough for this job as principal? Have I harmed anybody unintentionally? Do I deserve this type of success in my life? So it's a constant competing beliefs around, yes, I am good enough. No, I'm not good enough. And how do I manage that, and which voice prevails? And so as you ask about, what does, obstacles that I carry with me, it's kind of an ongoing one. There's trauma that continues. And so as you think about the ACE score, so the ACE stands for Adverse Childhood, Adverse Childhood, I forget what the E is, I'm sorry. Experience, thank you. Adverse Childhood Experience. And as anybody that has 3 or more, you're navigating some pretty steep things. So as I look at the ACE assessment, I check a lot of those boxes. And so those are still barriers that show up, but I feel like I've developed a level of identity awareness and consciousness that I am able to feel them when they start bubbling up, and then it manifests itself in a more productive manner, not in some other ways where it might be drugs or alcohol or something like that. So those are the battles that I continue to have, that are situated based on my experiences from long ago. And it's more about that positive self-talk, that believing in oneself, to know that I'm positioned where I am today because I'm meant to be here, and that my narrative, my truth is meant to be shared with individuals who are interested in listening, I guess. So that's kind of the journey, if you will.
Mike, you have been a wealth of information. Your perspective is very unique. You have certainly an academician's perspective of your life, your career, your NFL experiences, and your future. When you look back and look at the relationship we had as player and agent, what would you tell people about our relationship and why it was successful for both of us?
You don't want somebody to, again, if we think about people who are prima donnas, they just want people that are going to build them up, that narcissistic type of belief and attitudes and so forth. The reality is, longevity in the league are people that are going to share the hard truths, the people that are going to give you truth with grace, because truth is so important to have. And Craig is somebody that has a long career, has a lot of positive relationships, and and when you have a positive relationship, and you can see, history oftentimes repeats itself. So some of the things that we're seeing in the NFL now, potentially Craig has experience with that he can help guide through those experiences, or at least give from my experience, this is what I saw at this time, and this is how we worked through it with a previous client of mine. But I think the most important aspect that Craig can give to the table, and there's many of them, but for me, speaking on behalf of Michael Lehan and what my beliefs are, is the fact that it's important to have somebody that will give you the truth with grace, that will give it to you raw, real, and uncut. And it's done with kind, but because there's a level of compassion that's also there. He has a great team around him. Like I said, he has very positive relationships with people around the league. And those are all elements because if you want to have a long career, you need to be able to take guidance. You need to be able to take coaching not only on the field, but off the field. And essentially, Craig's that coach off the field. And he has a tenure likely longer than any of the coaches that you have in the locker room. So you need to be able to take heed from that. And the earlier that you're able to position and listen, the better off you'd be. Absolutely.
Michael, I want to thank you very much for your time today. I just want to share a perspective, and that is that, all the experiences you've had, and we've had experiences too, different, all of us are different, has made you who you are. And it's lit a fire that's enables you to touch a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And being in the position you're in education, and especially in high school, when a lot of kids are committing suicide and they don't know who they are, and social media has kind of contributed to that too. It's a blessing that you went through a lot of the trials that you did, because it has made you the man you are, and you can actually make a bigger impact than you would have otherwise.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Pro Mindset. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. 5 stars, of course. You can follow us on our website, ProMindsetPodcast.com, or on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Pro Mindset Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you the next time.